live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
The country's president confirmed that an extremist leader considered a central figure in Sri Lanka's Easter suicide bombings died in the attacks.
Kim Jong-un accuses the U.S. of acting in bad faith in talks on its nuclear arsenal as the North Korean leader leaves Russia following his first summit with President Vladimir Putin.
A powerful cyclone smashes into northern Mozambique, leaving at least one person dead, barely a month after a superstorm devastated the center of the country, killing hundreds.
And Chinese President Xi Jinping seeks to bat away concerns about his ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, saying his global infrastructure project will have zero tolerance for corruption while vowing to prevent death risks.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. The country's president confirmed that an extremist leader considered a central figure in Sri Lanka's Easter suicide bombings died in the attacks. Zaran Hashim, a radical preacher, died at the Shangri-La Hotel in the capital, Colombo. The president added that Hashim lived accompanied by a second bomber, identified only as Ilham. He said,
part of CCTV footage recovered from the scene. Hashim, who founded the NTJ, appeared in a video released by the Islamic State group when it claimed the strikes. Hashim was from the coastal Sri Lanka town of Katankudi. There earlier this week, his sister told the BBC she was horrified by what her brother has done. She said, "Even if he is my brother, I cannot accept this. I don't care about him anymore," adding that Hashim had been in contact with her until about 2 years ago when he went quiet. More than 250 people were killed in the attacks against 3 churches and 3 hotels. A 4th planned attack on a hotel failed. President Sirisena also said that Sri Lankan intelligence services believed around 130 suspects linked to Islamic State or Islamic State group were in the country and that police were hunting 70 who were still at large. Meanwhile, the country's president also said that Sri Lankan police, or top police official, Inspector General of Police Pujit Jayasundara, has resigned over failures that led to the deadly Easter bomb attacks. President Maithripala Sirisena, quote, "I'll nominate a new IGP soon," told reporters. Sirisena's nominee has to be confirmed by a constitutional council. The resignation comes after the country's top defense ministry official, Defense Secretary Hemasiri Fernando, resigned on Thursday. Australia on Friday warned more terror attacks were likely in Sri Lanka, cautioning citizens against visiting the island nation following the Easter Sunday bombing that claimed 253 lives. Terrorists are likely to carry out further attacks in Sri Lanka, the Foreign Ministry warned in its latest travel advice. Attacks could be indiscriminate, including in places visited by foreigners, it said. Canberra advised Australians to reconsider your need to travel to Sri Lanka following similar warnings from Britain, the Netherlands, and the United States since the April 21 bombings. The U.S. State Department has warned that terrorist groups continue plotting possible attacks with targets including tourist locations, places of worship, and airports.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un accused the U.S. of acting in bad faith at his summit with Russia's Vladimir Putin, Pyongyang state media said on Friday. Kim and Putin met Thursday in the far eastern Russian port of Vladivostok for their first summit, squarely aimed at countering U.S. influence with Pyongyang and Washington deadlocked over the North's nuclear arsenal. Now, during the discussions, Kim said the Korean situation was a standstill and has reached a critical point, according to KCNA. He added the U.S. adopted a unilateral attitude in bad faith at the recent second DPRK-U.S. summit talks. At that, quote, peace and security on the Korean Peninsula will entirely depend on the U.S. future attitude. The Kim-Trump summit broke down in late February without a deal on North Korea's nuclear arsenal after cash-strapped Pyongyang demanded immediate relief from sanctions, but the two sides disagreed over what the North was prepared to give up in return. Russia has already called for the sanctions to be eased, while the U.S. has accused it of trying to help Pyongyang evade some of the measures. Accusations Moscow denies. On Thursday, Putin emerged from the meeting saying that, like Washington, Moscow supports efforts to reduce tensions and prevent nuclear conflicts. But he also insisted that the North needed guarantees of its security, the preservation of its sovereignty.
Итогами переговоров мы все довольны, я и мои коллеги. Председатель Ким Чен Ын человек достаточно открытый и ведет свободную дискуссию. Самое главное, нужно восстановить, и мы сегодня об этом говорили в ходе переговоров, восстановить силу международного права. Вернуться к ситуации, когда международное право, а не кулачное право определяют положение в мире, ситуацию в мире. Если мы это...
An analyst says the U.S. is not going to be happy with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's meeting Russia's Vladimir Putin in Vladivostok, squarely aimed at countering U.S. influence as Kim faces off with Donald Trump over Pyongyang's nuclear arsenal.
US are not going to be happy about it because, and as a matter of fact, it was one of the goals of the summit, to make Americans less happy and maybe more willing to negotiate and to make some concessions. And this was a major Russian goal, just to remind the world that Russia, A, exists, B, is a nuclear power, C, has some say on the future of the Korean issue. And it was, yes, it was his task, and he basically achieved what he wanted. Basically, this talk about possible guarantee of the regime security, these talks have been around for quite a long time. And frankly, I consider these talks rather meaningless, because nobody is going to guarantee internal security of the Kim family.
Kim said he hoped to usher in a new heyday in ties between Pyongyang and Moscow. Both men said they were looking to strengthen ties that date back to the Soviet Union's support for the founder of North Korea, Kim's grandfather Kim Il-sung. The two shared a lunch that included borscht, crab salad, and venison dumplings, Russian news agency TASS reported. A North Korean leader invited Putin to visit North Korea at a convenient time, and the invitation was readily accepted, KCNA said.
But some kind of small-scale military exercises will happen, and it will be a way to remind the Americans that if North Korea is ignored, well, it can basically bite back.
In other news, Chinese President Xi Jinping sought to ease growing concerns about his ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, vowing to prevent debt risks and saying his global infrastructure project is not an exclusive club. China has also rejected accusations that Belt and Road is a debt trap and a geopolitical tool for Beijing's ambitions of becoming a global superpower. Take a look.
不搞封闭排他的 小圈子，把绿色作为底色，推动绿色基础设施建设、绿色投资、绿色金融，保护好我们赖以生存的共同家园。坚持一切合作都在阳光下运作，共同以零容忍的态度打击腐败。
Xi's signature foreign policy aims to reinvent the ancient Silk Road to connect Asia to Europe and Africa. Through massive investments in maritime, road, and rail projects with hundreds of billions of dollars in financing from Chinese banks, it offers to bring much-needed modern infrastructure to developing countries as well. But critics say it is riddled with opaque deals favoring Chinese companies while saddling nations with debt and environmental damage. In a nod to the concerns over loans, President Xi added, we also need to ensure the commercial and fiscal sustainability of all projects so that they will achieve the intended goals as planned.
Chinese President Xi Jinping addressed some 40 world leaders at the Belt and Road Forum in Beijing, but his speech may have been aimed at the head of state, not in the audience, but also U.S. President Donald Trump. Xi spent a large portion of his speech addressing Chinese domestic reforms, pledging to address state subsidies, protect intellectual property rights, follow foreign investments in more sectors, and avoid competitive devaluation of the yuan. All four are issues the U.S. is addressing in trade talks with Beijing.
中国将着力营造尊重知识价值的营商环境，全面完善知识产权保护法律体系，大力强化执法，加强对外国知识产权人合法权益的保护，杜绝强制技术转让。
Xi also reiterated that China would not engage in competitive devaluation of its yuan currency, another issue with the U.S.
中国不搞以邻为壑的汇率贬值，将不断完善人民币汇率形成机制，使市场在资源配置中起决定性作用。
The U.S. and China have agreed on a currency provision in their potential trade agreement, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said in February. Bloomberg News reported earlier that the U.S. was asking China to keep the value of the yuan stable to neutralize any effort to soften the blow of U.S. tariffs.
共同以零容忍。
In other news, Malacanang said that President Duterte and Chinese President Xi Jinping have agreed that the long-standing disputes over the resource-rich West Philippine Sea could be addressed through bilateral consultations. Presidential spokesperson Salvador Panelo said Duterte raised the sea disputes but tried to ease the tension over the issue during this bilateral meeting with President Xi in Beijing. Panelo also said that Xi had stressed the importance of good neighborliness and proper handling of differences between the countries. He also said that President Duterte, for his part, assured that Manila and Beijing remain allies. President Duterte's meeting with President Xi occurred in the wake of the reported presence of Chinese maritime vessels in the Philippine-occupied Pag-asa Island. Hundreds of Chinese vessels believed to be part of Beijing's maritime militia were seen surrounding Pag-asa Island. The meeting between the two leaders also came in the wake of the reported mass harvesting of giant clams by Chinese vessels in the Panatag or Scarborough Shoal, a rich fishing ground off the coast of Zambales.
Two formal agreements were signed between the Philippines and China during President Rodrigo Duterte's fourth trip to Beijing. China to attend the Second Belt and Road Forum, Malacanang said on Thursday. Presidential spokesperson Salvador said that two agreements were signed after the bilateral meeting between Duterte and Chinese President Xi Jinping at the Great Hall of People in Beijing on Thursday. The two leaders witnessed the signing of the handover certificate grant aid for the Dangerous Drugs Abuse Treatment and Rehabilitation Centers project. Panelo explained that this is a ceremonial handover of the drug treatment facilities in Sarangani and Agusan del Norte, which were provided by China through grants. The agreement was signed by Philippine Ambassador Jose Santiago L. Santaromana and Chinese Minister of Commerce Zhongshan. Duterte and Xi also witnessed the signing of the exchange of letters on production capacity and investment cooperation between the Philippines and China.
The news continues here on Eagle News International. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Powerful cyclone smashed into northern Mozambique, leaving one person dead barely a month after a superstorm slammed into the country's center, devastating the area and leaving hundreds dead. Category 3 Cyclone Kenneth Packing winds of 160 kilometers an hour struck the north coast's Cabo Delgado province late Thursday after swiping the Comoros Islands. The United Nations warned of flash flooding and landslides as Mozambique's Emergency Situation Institute reported one person was killed by a falling coconut tree at Pemba in Cabo Delgado. On the tourist island of Ibo, 90% of homes for the 6,000 population had been flattened, according to spokesman for the Institute, Antonio Beleza. The UN World Food Programme issued a statement announcing the cyclone had made landfall in the north. The cyclone is expected to bring heavy rains in the area for several days, with over 600 millimeters rainfall expected. That volume of rain would be nearly double the 10 days of accumulated rainfall that caused flooding in Beira during Cyclone Idai. Forecasters at Meteo France warned that Kenneth could trigger waves off Mozambique's northeastern shore as much as 5 meters or 16 feet higher than usual. The Red Cross warned it was especially concerned about the storm's impact, as many communities in Mozambique are still reeling and recovering from a cyclone that hit on the night of March 14 to the 15th. The most powerful storm to strike the region in decades, Cyclone Idai, cut a path of destruction through Mozambique, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. It left more than 1,000 dead, caused damage estimated at around $2 billion.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Sophie Gregoire, or Trudeau, helped the military pack sandbags on Wednesday during a visit to a flood evacuation center in Gatineau, Quebec. Our EBC correspondent Rosoli Castro reports.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau visited Jean-René Mouret Center, one of the disaster centers in Gatineau, to check on the victims, after which he rolled up his sleeves to start sandbagging, helping out Canadian troops. He thanked the Canadian Army for their hard work and their continued effort in assisting the community.
Okay, all right. Excellent. They let you come here to help out? Yes, it is. It's on report. It really is. Thank you so much. I heard did the mayor see you guys cut the ends off his cones like that? Well, I filled a lot of yeah, that's a line, right? I filled a lot of sandbags, so this is a great trip. Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you guys too much, but thank you for all your tips.
Flood water level continues to rise as most areas in Gatineau are already affected. The city of Gatineau says that rainfall today has caused water levels to rise quickly than over the past days. Canadian Armed Forces continue to assist in sandbagging. Residents pile up sandbags in the perimeter of their property. As more areas are affected by the flood, roads have been closed and traffic rerouted. According to Ottawa River Planning Board, levels of the Ottawa River will continue to rise from the recent rainfall and snowmelt over the central part of the basin. In the forecast, peak levels observed in 2017 may be possible in all locations depending on the upcoming rain and precipitation. The city of Gatineau has provided Disaster Services Center for flood victims. The city says around 517 people have registered. Urgence Quebec says to date there are around 2,517 residents flooded and 919 were evacuated across Quebec.
What is the biggest needs for Gatineau right now?
Actually, we're in a strange situation where we've protected the houses. Everybody is mobilized, and we're looking at the sky and at the weather forecast to see if anything worse happens. So everything is under control as we speak. But we've seen it in the past. Things can change very, very quickly. It changed in 2017 in 24 hours. So we'll stay on guard up until we're 100% sure that the crisis is over.
And how about for the relocation of the houses? Is there any Any news about that?
Actually, that's a huge topic that we'll have to address. Discussions have started, but we'll have to address that after the crisis. There's many citizens are preoccupied. All levels of government. We want a solution that is long-lasting, but that's going to take lots of discussions because we'll have hard decisions to take.
That's good.
Residents across Gatineau continue to make emergency preparations as the cities of Ottawa and Gatineau calls for more volunteers in sandbagging and distributing sandbags to communities. This is Rosalie Castro in Gatineau, Quebec, reporting for Eagle News. I am one with 25.
Thank you, Rosalie. Japan's Emperor Akihito will step down from the chrysanthemum throne on Tuesday, the first abdication in the world's oldest imperial family for 2 centuries, ending 30 years of his popular reign and ushering in a new era. The abdication brings down the curtain on the current Heisei era, which started in January 1989 at the height of Japan's economic boom and kicks off a new imperial era called Reiwa, meaning beautiful harmony. The popular Akihito, 85 years old, stunned the nation in 2016 when he signaled his desire to take a back seat, citing his age and health problems. He has been treated for prostate cancer and has also undergone heart surgery. There have been abdications in Japan's long imperial history, which has mythological origins and stretches back more than 2 millennia, but the last one was more than 200 years ago. The status of the emperor is sensitive in Japan given its 20th century history of war waged in the name of Akihito's father, Hirohito. Akihito was born in 1933 just as Japan was embarking on its militaristic sweep across Asia and was 11 when the war ended in defeat. He listened in tears on August 15, 1945 as Hirohito made a radio address, the first ever by an emperor, to announce the shock loss. His father was allowed to remain on the throne after Japan's defeat and U.S. occupation, but his status was downgraded from semi-divine sovereign to a figurehead with no political power. Now, for his part, Akihito has embraced the role and tried to use it to help heal the scars of the war while modernizing the ancient monarchy for a democratic age with a warmer, popular touch. Celebrations are planned across the country as the famously hardworking Japanese enjoy an unprecedented 10-day holiday with a series of special days off combining with the traditional Golden Week in May. Akihito's eldest son, 59-year-old Crown Prince Naruhito, will take the throne the following day in a series of solemn ceremonies, receiving the imperial regalia, an ancient mirror sword and jewel considered crucial evidence of an emperor's legitimacy.
Human rights attorney Amal Clooney implored the United Nations Security Council to bring ISIS fighters to justice and urged them to pass a resolution declaring sexual violence a weapon of war. Clooney has long been fighting for the rights of sexual violence victims across the world. Her ferocious call for justice on the behalf of countless Yazidi women who were tortured and raped by the fallen Islamic State in Iraq is making headlines everywhere.
Nadia told me of her suffering at the hands of 12 different ISIS men who enslaved and brutalized her. She recounted the murder of her mother and brothers. She showed me threatening messages that she had received from ISIS on her phone. And as she did this, it occurred to me that she never expressed fear for her life, for her safety. Instead, that day and ever since, she has spoken of only one fear: that when this is all over, the ISIS men will just shave off their beards and go back to their normal lives. That there will be no justice. I am legal counsel to Nadia and to other Yazidi women and girls who were kidnapped, bought, sold, enslaved, and raped by ISIS, and my brief is the pursuit of justice. But it was clear from an early stage that this was going to be a challenge. The world's powers were focused on a military solution, and nobody wished to speak about justice. an American hostage named Kayla Mueller, who was held in brutal conditions for over 18 months and raped repeatedly by the head of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Sayyaf showed no solidarity with her fellow females. She locked them in a room, instigated their beatings, and put makeup on them to prepare them for rape. I am requesting her transfer to the US to face justice for those crimes. In France, I represent Yazidi victims in a case against Lafarge, a company that made multi-million-dollar payments to ISIS and is the first multinational to be charged with complicity in crimes against humanity committed by the group. In Germany, I represent a Yazidi victim in a case in which the German Supreme Court confirmed that the charges against an ISIS commander responsible for sexual slavery amount to genocide, the first judicial recognition of this fact anywhere in the world. And 2 weeks ago, I was in Munich, where the first trial against an ISIS member for international crimes committed against a Yazidi victim has now begun. In that case, I represent the mother of a 5-year-old Yazidi child who was enslaved, chained outdoors to a window, and left to slowly die of thirst in the scorching heat. The ISIS member who allowed it to happen now faces charges of murder as a war crime. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let us remember that the crimes committed by ISIS against women and girls are unlike anything we have witnessed in modern times. ISIS controlled territory the size of the United Kingdom and ruled over 8 million people. More than 40,000 foreign fighters from 110 countries are estimated to have joined ISIS's ranks in Iraq and Syria. But the question of bringing them to justice has barely raised a whisper. And yet, if we don't act now, it will be too late.
She urged member states to go beyond a draft resolution combating sexual violence as a weapon of war in order to bring ISIS terrorists to justice.
This is your Nuremberg moment. Your chance to stand on the right side of history. You owe it to Nadia and to the thousands of women and girls who must watch ISIS members shave off their beards and go back to their normal lives while they, the victims, never can.
To other news now, Japanese scientists have succeeded in creating what they call the first ever artificial crater on an asteroid, a step towards shedding light on how the solar system formed, according to the country's space agency. The announcement comes after the Hayabusa 2 probe fired an explosive device at the Ryugu asteroid earlier this month to blast a crater in the surface and scoop up material aiming to reveal more about the origins of life on Earth. Yuichi Tsuda, Hayabusa 2 project manager at the Japanese space agency JAXA, told reporters they confirmed the crater from the images captured by the probe located 1,700 meters from the asteroid's surface. The aim of blasting the crater on Ryugu is to throw up fresh material from under the asteroid's surface that could shed light on the early stages of the solar system. The asteroid is thought to contain relatively large amounts of organic matter and water. Scientists say years ago when the solar system was born.
The amount of water in the Angat Dam, which supplies the most parts of Metro Manila, is nearing the critical level. The National Water Resources Board announced today that the water might drop to 180 meters this weekend, which is considered by experts as low. Pagasa hydrologist Edgar de la Cruz said that once the level drops to 180 meters, there will be less water meant for irrigation.
So by sa weekend na to, aabot na siya sa 180, no? So pababa na siya sa minimum operating level na 180 meters, no? Unless na may pagbabago na significant na magbabago sa mga or magkaroon ng pag-ulan, makikita natin na bababa na siya sa 180 minimum level, no? Critical level, no? Sa weekend.
The Bustos Dam, an irrigation dam located in Bustos, Bulacan, could end up getting closed if it doesn't get enough water from Angat. Officials said, however, that cutting down on water meant for irrigation would have minimal effects on farms in Pampanga and Bulacan because it's already harvesting season in the two provinces. They also assured that even if Angat's level drops to 170 meters, its supply to the Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System will remain normal.
Magkakaroon po ng reduction, no, sa irrigation, no? From 35 cubic meters noong Abril, magiging 10 cubic meters na lang siya average for the month of May.
Angat's water is transported to the MWSS, which then delivers the water to various households in Metro Manila and nearby towns through its concessionaires Manila Water and Maynilad.
Kaya ba nating magtipid ng mga, let's say, 4 liters, no? A day, no? Paano ba yan? Reduction, konting sa pagligo, sa pagmatulog, or mga leaks. Tinignan namin, no? 4 liters a day, kung 12 billion na population, it's around 40, no? 48 million liters per day. Opo.
Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
Health is our most important asset, and it should always be a
hapon.
Sri Lanka fears its lucrative tourism industry could see arrivals drop up to 30%, with losses of $1.5 billion this year after the deadly Easter attacks, according to their finance minister. Finance Minister Mangala Surawira said that tourism will be the worst affected. He said, "We expect a 30% drop in arrivals, and that means a loss of about $1.5 billion in foreign exchange." Samarawi said the country could take up to 2 years to fully recover from Sunday's attacks, which devastated 3 luxury hotels and 3 non-Muslim churches and killed 253 people, among them many foreigners. ISIS group said it carried out the attack, and the government says it believes local extremists were at least inspired by ISIS militants.
Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said a no-deal Brexit must be avoided by all means, as Japanese firms have used Britain as the gateway to Europe and need order to continue doing business. Abe was in Brussels following an April 11 summit in which EU leaders gave Prime Minister Theresa May another 6 months to get Britain's parliament to endorse the exit terms she struck last year.
本日は英国の EU 離脱についても Today, we also exchanged views on the UK's withdrawal from the EU, as the withdrawal date was extended at a recent extraordinary European Council meeting. We welcome the fact that, for the meanwhile, the no-deal Brexit is avoided. Japan has strong economic relations with Europe, including the UK. From that perspective, I strongly expect that the withdrawal process will proceed smoothly by avoiding a no-deal Brexit, by minimizing its adverse impact on global economy, including those to Japanese companies, with the EU and the UK gathering their wisdoms to overcome the situation.
Early withdrawal, he said, is necessary because Japanese firms have invested so much in Britain as a European Union member country. The companies, Abe said, need legal stability as well as transparency ahead. Analysts have warned that the negotiations for Britain's exit have in many cases accelerated the decisions of Japanese firms to leave Britain. During their April 11 summit, European Union leaders agreed with Prime Minister Theresa May to delay Brexit by up to October 31, saving the continent from what could have been a chaotic no-deal departure on April 12. The April 12 deadline was already a delay from an original deadline of March 29.
In other business news, Tokyo's convenience stores, known as Konbini, are at the center of a row over whether they should stay open 24 hours a day, every day of the year, a debate that strikes at the heart of crippling labor shortages in aging Japan. Day or night, they are rarely short of customers, but the much-loved stores are now at the center of a row over whether they should stay open 24 hours a day. The government has gotten involved too, with Industry Minister Hiroshige Seko urging convenience store chains to come up with plans to tackle long hours and labor shortages in the sector, calling Konbini part of Japan's social infrastructure. Seko's ministry have compiled a survey showing nearly two-thirds of franchisees, 61%, said they cannot find enough staff, up from 22% in 2014. Moreover, 40% said they were unhappy with their situation, complaining of low profits and high royalties paid to the company head office. This was up from 17% 4 years ago.
だからこう人がいないけどなんとか雇ってやってる感じっていうのは異常だと思いますね。しかも都内のどこのコンビニ見ても、別に上野だけじゃなくても、どこのコンビニ見ても同じような状況が続いているので、それだったら別に開ける必要はなくて、本当にしっかり時間を決めて、この時間だけオープンするっていうふうにやれば、全然何の問題もないとは思いますけどね。
数が多いんでコンビニ。全部が全部空いてなくても空いてるとこには行くけど、閉めたいところがあったら閉めてもいいんじゃないかなとも思います。空いてた方が嬉しいけど、ちょっと歩けばあるんで、全部閉まってちょっと困るっていうのはありますけど。
The news continues here on Eagle News International. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Landmarks, Linggo, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi.
Health is our most
Linggo, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi.
Researchers reported last year humanity destroyed an expanse of tropical forest nearly the size of England, the fourth largest decline since global satellite data became available in 2001. The pace of the loss is staggering, the equivalent of 30 football fields disappearing every minute of every day in 2018, or a total of 120,000 square kilometers, or that's 46,000 square miles. Almost a third of that area, some 36,000 square kilometers, was pristine primary rainforest, according to the annual assessment from scientists at Global Forest Watch, based at the University of Maryland. Rainforests are the planet's richest repository of wildlife and a critical sponge of soaking up planet-heating CO2. Despite a slew of countermeasures at both the national and international level, deforestation has continued largely unabated since the beginning of the century. Global forest loss peaked in 2016, fueled in part by El Nino weather conditions and uncontrolled fires in Brazil and Indonesia. The main drivers are the livestock industry and large-scale commodity agriculture, palm oil in Asia and Africa, soybeans and biofuel crops in South America. Small-scale commercial farming of cocoa, for example, can also lead to the clearing of forests. A quarter of tropical tree cover loss in 2018 occurred in Brazil, with the Democratic Republic of Congo and Indonesia each accounting for about 10%. Malaysia and Madagascar also saw high levels of deforestation last year. Nearly a third of primary forest destruction took place in Brazil, with the Democratic Republic of Congo, Indonesia, Colombia, and Bolivia rounding out the top 5. Madagascar lost 2% of its entire rainforest in 2018.
Thousands of emperor penguin chicks drowned when the sea ice on which they were being raised was destroyed when a catastrophe occurred in 2016 in Antarctica's Weddell Sea. The British Antarctic Survey, or BAS, used satellite imagery to study the behavior of the Haley Bay colony in the Weddell Sea due south of Cape Hope, which normally sees up to 25,000 penguin pairs mate each year. They found that in 2016, when abnormally warm and stormy weather broke up the sea ice on which the penguins normally raise their young, almost all the chicks died. Now, this pattern was repeated in 2017 and 2018. The BAS said the colony at Haley Bay has all but disappeared. Emperors are the tallest and heaviest of the penguin species and need reliable patches of sea ice on which to breed. And this icy platform must persist from April, when the birds arrive, until December, when their chicks fledge. If the sea ice breaks up too early, the young birds will not have the right feathers to start swimming. Now, research suggests the species might lose anywhere between 50 and 70% of its global population by the end of this century if sea ice is reduced to the extent that computer models show.
According to new guidelines issued by the World Health Organization, children under 5 must spend less time sitting watching screens or restrained in prams and seats, get better quality sleep, and have more time for active play if they are to grow up healthy. Speaking to Reporter, whose official Fiona Bull said physical activity has got many benefits across the life course.
Well, physical activity has got many benefits across the life course, and it's become apparent that we need to focus on little children as much as we do on older children and adults. Young children start off being very active, but the way our lifestyles are now shaped by use of the car, by use of electronic equipment, by the ways in which we recreate, children are spending less time moving. That means they're not getting the physical and motor skill development, not getting the energy expenditure, not enjoying play with friends, family, parents, and all of those are important components of healthy lifestyle. So we've focused the effort to develop guidelines to guide parents, caregivers, kindergartens, childcare centres on what's the best environments and ways in which to promote physical activity in this age group.
The new guidelines of physical activity, sedentary behavior, and sleep for children under 5 years of age were developed by a WHO panel of experts. They assess the effects on young children of inadequate sleep and time spent sitting watching screens or restrained in chairs and prams. They also reviewed evidence around the benefits of increased activity levels.
Ces trois activités, l'activité physique, le temps sédentaire et le sommeil, ont une interaction très importante, spécialement pour des très jeunes enfants. C'est un sommeil de bonne qualité assure qu'ils sont reposés pendant la journée pour jouer et apprendre et se développer. Le temps d'activité physique qu'on recommande, qui c'est à peu près 3 heures d'activité physique pendant la journée, laisse le temps de développer non seulement les muscles, le corps, mais aussi le développement mental, émotionnel, social de l'enfant. Mais pour ça, il faut protéger le temps de sommeil pour qu'il soit assez reposé pendant la journée pour profiter de sa journée entière.
Failure to meet current physical activity recommendations is responsible for more than 5 million deaths globally each year across all age groups. Currently, over 23% of adults and 80% of adolescents are not sufficiently physically active. If healthy physical activity, sedentary behavior, and sleep habits are established early in life, this helps shape habits through childhood, adolescence, and into adulthood.
Parents are really important role models for their children, both in their own enjoyment of physical activity and restricting their screen time, but also in making opportunities for their children to be able to play, be physically active, to ensure that they get quality sleep. That includes having regular bedtimes and wake-up times, a calming routine to help them get to sleep, and also ensuring that they replace sedentary, passive screen time with interactive play. That storytelling, reading with children, interacting with a caregiver is so important for child development that these are the activities we really want to prioritize.
The pattern of overall 24-hour activity is key, replacing prolonged restraint or sedentary screen time with more active play, while making sure young children get enough good quality sleep. Quality sedentary time spent in interactive, non-screen-based activities with a caregiver, such as reading, storytelling, singing, and puzzles, is very important for child development. The important interactions between physical activity, sedentary behavior, and adequate sleep time and their impact on physical and mental health and well-being were recognized by the Commission on Ending Childhood Obesity, which called for clear guidance on physical activity, sedentary behavior, and sleep in young children. Applying the recommendations in these guidelines during the first 5 years of life will contribute to children's motor and cognitive development and lifelong health.
And finally, in our news, Oscar winner Rami Malek will appear in the latest James Bond film starring Daniel Craig. That is according to their director, Cary Fukunaga. Take a look.
interesting. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards on Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we're one with 25.